So today we're going to talk about social media lead generation. And as Nathan said, I am Jeff Cohen, and on Twitter I'm at Jeffrey L. Cohen. And I'm the author of the B2B social media book. So I actually have the distinction of being able to say, yeah, I wrote the book on B2B social media. And it's available on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. And if you're overloaded with hashtags, because we have hashtag B2B Rising, hashtag BMA CLT, you can use another one. We can fill up all your tweets with hashtags, and then you won't even have to say anything. So B2B SM is a hashtag that I use, that I follow, really trying to build a community around the idea of social media for B2B companies. What we've found is that lots of B2B marketers have a problem. Basically, 73% of CEOs don't believe that marketers drive revenue. They still think that marketing is all about arts and crafts. So what we did, we actually said, well, let's take a different approach to this. Traditionally, B2B marketers have been focused on leads, basically bringing leads in so that you can deal with sales. And from a social media perspective, leads actually fix this problem. If you take a lead generation approach to social media, you can actually prove to your CMO or to your CEO that you're driving value. And leads, in fact, are a proxy for sales. Many of you who understand that B2B marketing and sales is all about a long sales cycle. Certainly companies have 6 to 9 month cycles. I've heard about companies where it may be 12 to 18 months. But when you look at leads, leads actually are a leading indicator of what's happening with sales. If you see what your leads look like now, you may know what your sales are going to look like in the future. One of the things that happens when B2B marketers come to not just social media, but the idea of lead generation, they think their business is all about generating leads. And so if you're familiar with the book or the movie Moneyball, what actually happened was they discovered that they were looking at the wrong things. When they were evaluating players, it was not necessarily about batting averages or home runs. It actually turned out to be how often they got on base. So they reevaluated the statistics that they were looking at. And so in this case, your goal really should not be to buy leads as a B2B marketer. Your goal actually needs to be, how can you acquire customers? Because that, in fact, is a much more sustainable model for your business. Growing the customer base, not just focusing on a one-time lead or a one-time sale. So it's important to understand the difference between traditional lead generation and social media lead generation. In a traditional lead gen campaign, you might start with a list. Maybe it's your in-house list of people who have dropped a business card off at a trade show, subscribed to an email. Maybe you even bought a list. And so you take that list and you send out a mailer to people. On that mailer, maybe there's a web address, some way for them to contact you, coded to that mailer. They would take that action, and then they would get into the lead cycle. And it was very easy to track those sales through and discover basically the ROI of that campaign. It was completely linear. Everybody there came through that particular mailer. But social media is very different. You really don't necessarily know how someone's going to get there. They may come from a product page. Maybe they clicked on a tweet, clicked on a link that you shared. They liked a Facebook page, +1 on a Google page, followed a blog post, all sorts of things to come to a landing page. And then from that landing page, they have the ability to become a lead. So you have many more sources now in social media of how people get there. So what we're going to talk about are the 3 keys for social media lead generation success. They're building a network of strong ties, influence connections for content sharing, and mastering social conversion. So the first thing to start with is strong ties. Very often, people talk about how social media really lets you build a network of weak ties. In other words, you're not really connected to people, you don't really know them that well. But in fact, I would argue that strong ties is what you can build in social media. So another one of these alarming stats, and this stat has even changed. So basically, 60% of the sales cycle or the buying cycle is already over now by the time a prospect contacts you. I've actually seen more recent versions of a similar study where they say it's now 70%. So what this has done is completely flip the role of marketing and sales. It used to be, before internet, before social media, before everybody was spending their time online, doing research, learning about companies, it used to be the way to find out about a company was to actually pick up the phone and call them and start with the salesperson. The salesperson was responsible for education. And what's happened now is, now that this 60 or 70% of activity is happening before they even contact you, they're educating themselves. They're asking for recommendations. They're looking at review sites. They're asking friends, colleagues about what's going on. Marketing's role is now to make sure that they're there, that marketing has gotten enough information, enough platforms, whatever is needed for these people to understand what it is they're looking for and what sorts of things your company can provide. So as Ryan alluded to, yes, we call ourselves B2B marketers. We talk about the difference between consumer sales and business sales, but in fact, it's true. It is people selling to people, and the thing that we know is people buy from people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. And you can almost think of that as a progression that social media can help you support. You can connect with people and get to know them. You can get them to like you by sharing information that's helpful and valuable. And then you can get them to trust you through that ongoing relationship. Because in fact, prospects really don't care about your products. At the end of the day, they absolutely don't care. What they really want is solutions to their problems. And so from a content marketing perspective, from a social media perspective, one of the ways that companies have succeeded is by creating content, whether it's an ebook, a white paper, webinars, cost calculators, things that they can share with prospects and customers that help them solve their business problems. And what the prospects do in exchange for that is they give their email or other contact information. And so what they're really doing is they're really raising their hand and saying, I am interested in what you're doing, I'm interested in the information that you're providing, I'm willing to begin this relationship for this valuable piece of content. So I said we're going to look at how you build strong ties on social media, and according to the theory of strong ties, you actually build it through three different things: interaction, affection, and time. So the first thing to remember is social media is not if you build it, they will come. There are lots of B2B companies who say, oh, well, we need to be on Twitter, we need to be on Facebook, we need to have a LinkedIn group, whatever it is, and they put it up there, and they expect people to magically find it. It's just not going to happen. You actually have to market your efforts, and in a social media environment, you can, in fact, friend people, follow people, connect with them, reach out to them so that they know you're there, so that you set some expectations of the kinds of information, the kinds of things that you're going to be sharing, so that they will follow you and they will connect with you. So when I was putting this together, I was thinking, what is the creature on Earth with the shortest lifespan? Turns out to be the mayfly, because when you think about social media and you think about the ephemeral nature of it, in other words, if you're putting something out on Twitter, how long does it last? What's kind of the window of opportunity that people will see it? So the mayfly is a great analogy for this. So a mayfly lives for 1 to 24 hours. So I was thinking, well, if the lifespan of a mayfly is 1 hour, we'll go with the shortest version. What's the lifespan of a how many tweets is this mayfly going to see? And so according to some research done by Moz.com, based on retweets and things like that, the lifespan of a tweet is 18 minutes. So a mayfly is going to see about 5 tweets, like the complete lifespan of 5 tweets throughout his 1 hour life. So with tweets having such a short lifespan, how much content do you need to share? How do you manage this across multiple platforms? So we came up with something called the 10-4-1 rule. And what the 10-4-1 rule, it's a guideline. It's a guideline ratio to get you started to understand how much content you should be sharing. And so it really starts with the number 10. And this is the curation number. This is 10 links to third-party articles, basically saying, I am part of the community, I'm sharing things that are valuable that actually are not mine. So really saying to your prospective audience that I found lots of great content and I'm sharing it with you, and I'm not asking for anything in return. And the middle number is the 4. And this is 4 links to a company blog post. So when you think about how to get started, you need to think about when you actually have 4 blog posts that you want to share. Because this is the number that actually drives it. And then the 1, because we're talking about social media lead generation, in this ratio, you need to share 1 link to a company landing page. And this is, maybe it's a sign-up form to download an ebook. Maybe it's a sign-up for a webinar or some other thing where you want to capture people's information. And the way to think about this is you probably want to think how this adapts for each platform. So for instance, on Twitter, you might do this over the course of maybe 2 days or 3 days. It's kind of depending on how much content you have and you can share. But on something like LinkedIn, it might happen over the course of a week. Again, it's a guideline to get you started thinking about how you should be sharing content and what kinds of content to share. But it really is a good way to get started. So then the next part of building strong ties is affection. And so in social media, there have been lots of conversations about social media is all about engagement. You need to engage with your customers. You need to respond. And in fact, one way to think about it is it's not so much engagement, it's affection. You understand them. You're sharing things with them. You want to actually build a relationship. So the Fluke Corporation it's a testing device company based in Seattle. And on their Facebook page, they show big and prominent their devices. This is one of their products. And they know that if you're a structural engineer and you're building a bridge and you need a device to make sure that the bridge is straight, you love their product because it really is a life and death issue. It really is that important to make sure the bridge is not going to fall down. So what they do is they do all sorts of things to show their customers that they have affection for them, that they care about the same things that they care about. So for instance, on National Meteorology Day, they had a cake in their office because this is something that's important to engineers. They need to understand how the weather affects different things, how the devices connect with that kind of information. So they shared a cake. They shared a picture of the cake on their Facebook page to show basically to show their customers and prospects that this is also important to them. When they release new products, they actually create a big product spread on Facebook marking the date. Because personally, I don't know what an 805 vibration meter does, but their customers care, and they care about the launch. They care about this new product. GE is a big B2B company, and you wouldn't necessarily think that they have this affection for their customers. But they've done a couple interesting things on Pinterest. GE was founded by Thomas Edison, so they have lots of historical photos and quotes and all sorts of things about Thomas Edison. So what they decided to do is they started making these little quote boxes, the kinds of things that your friends share on Facebook that drive you crazy. I know nobody in this room makes these and shares them on their Facebook page. We'll assume that it's just your friends. But so what GE did, they started making them with Thomas Edison, and not only are they sharing them on Facebook, but they gathered them all in one place on Pinterest. So then the last piece of building strong ties is time. Anything that you do in social media, you need to create a plan and be consistent. The worst thing that you can do is create a social media profile and be real active for a few weeks, a few months, and then just stop. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to build these connections with prospects, people to know, like, and trust you. And as you move through that progression, it's the time that's going to do it. The continuation and the consistency of sharing valuable information that will build that trust. Because publishing and sharing content online is actually the single biggest lever to social media lead generation. So now we're going to talk about influencing connections for content sharing, because it's not just you sharing the content. You need to make sure that other people do as well. So how do you get people to share? People are connecting with you for lots of reasons. Maybe they want inside information. Maybe they are looking to make a purchase. You know, maybe they're just trying to improve their business efficiency. And so what you need to do is create things that make them feel special, that make them feel smarter within their networks. Because if you pay attention to the kinds of things that people share, it may be informative, it may be educational, it may be entertaining. B2B marketers have definitely gotten a knock over the years of creating boring marketing. And there are lots of examples of companies who are doing things that are not boring, that are fun. For instance, there's a social media marketer who works at Cisco who actually makes funny videos. His job is to make funny videos about Cisco products. And he's gotten lots of kudos for it, lots of press accolades, and it actually drives business. It shows people that Cisco is not a big behemoth company that they think it is. They actually have a sense of humor about their products. So you need to think about the kinds of things that you're creating and think about your audience. What is it that's going to make them share it? Is it going to make them feel smarter? Is it going to make them feel funnier? Is it going to make them feel important in their network? So there's a company called Breaking Point. In Austin, Texas. They're a security company. They've since been acquired. But what they did, their customers were engineers who were purchasing very large security computer systems, cybersecurity things. And so they really talked in their language. They talked in their language. They actually worked with their own engineers to create all this content and created a really great blog on the topics that their prospects were searching for. And so they did things like they posted things on SlideShare. And if you're not using SlideShare for publicly accessible conversations or presentations, you really should, because this particular presentation about LTE 4G simulation, well, 1,200 people viewed this. And so you may not think that that's a lot of people, but in Breaking Point's business, where you're talking about products that cost over $100,000, you can bet that those 1,200 people are probably pretty good prospects. They are people interested in this topic. And so what they do is they would have a webinar, and they have a pretty prominent button on their site, so people sign up on the webinar, sends them to a very traditional sign-up form, a lead capture form, so that they know who's coming to the webinar, and they can follow up with them in a variety of manners. So what they did is they wound up, from all their social and digital marketing efforts, they closed millions of dollars in sales, which with an expensive product you can say, oh, well, okay, that makes sense. But their ROI was actually 2,800%. And so what they did, their marketing manager actually has a spreadsheet, literally going through tracking every single tactic, very detailed, so that they could actually get to that number. And so the last thing we're going to talk about is mastering social conversion. And social conversion really is the idea of leveraging the social activity on the social web to improve your conversion rate. And it really comes from using social proof and then the strong ties that we talked about earlier. So social proof is the idea of the idea that people don't like to do something for the first time as the person who started it. You know, we really want to feel safe, and we want to follow other people. That's just in our nature. There certainly are some people who like being out on that edge, but most people would rather be a follower, and so they want to show that. So for instance, for years, B2B companies have shown testimonials. They said, oh, well, we want to make sure that other customers who use our products or services, we want to use them to tell our story, because people want to feel like we're a real company, other people use us. And so they wound up putting up things like this. Working with Central States Manufacturing has been an absolute pleasure. Their deliveries are like clockwork, twice a week as promised. Their customer service is second to none, as their services are tailored to meet our unique market, blah, 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 blah. Does that sound like anybody you know? Does that actually prove any value to this company? So there's a company called Small Orange. It's a web hosting company up in the Triangle area of North Carolina. And they did an interesting experiment. The first thing they did was they said, okay, we're actually going to use tweets as our testimonial. So it means real people saying real things, and they used the favorite function on Twitter. When people said things about them, they would click favorite, and then they wrote a little script to pull them into their website. But what they found, it was a very interesting A/B test where they tried with the tweets up at the top and the tweets down below. And what down below, this is actually their homepage, but it shows their hosting plans. And what they found, when the tweet was down below, they got more clicks on the different options. But when it was above, they got fewer clicks, but more people actually signed up for the service. So better conversion rate on fewer clicks. But they're real testimonials. Someone can click on, this particular one, Cat Tara 13, you can click on that and be taken right to her profile. And if you have questions about their service, you can reach out to her. So it really, when you're thinking about lead generation, you're thinking about social conversion, it's about creating awesome content and reducing the friction around it, and reducing the friction around sharing it. So Marketo is a marketing automation company, and they do a great job of actually doing lead generation on Facebook. So right here on the top, these are a series of ebooks that they're sharing to provide some value to their customers and prospects. You click on it, takes you to a landing page. Pretty standard, but they're doing it on Facebook, and they're doing it pretty successfully. And then we'll come to LinkedIn for a second. This is some data from HubSpot that actually showed people coming from LinkedIn to sign up for things actually was the best network for lead generation. They had like a 3-time conversion rate over things coming from other networks. And there's some real interesting things on LinkedIn that I just want to share with you. If you have a company page on LinkedIn, LinkedIn's giving you a big free banner at the top. Basically, if you have new creative you're trying to test out, you can test banners up here for free. And if you go to the product page, you actually have the opportunity for 3 banners. 3 banners that can go to 3 different landing pages. Again, if you drive some traffic to your LinkedIn company page or your product page, you can test out different things, see how they work. And then when you actually drill down a level further into products, we get to some of those people-to-people connections. So for instance, this is a Salesforce product, and if you see over here, it actually says contact us, but it's 2 people who work for Salesforce. So rather than clicking, send me to a salesperson, I want info, some generic link, these are 2 people who you might know, you might have met them at a conference. You can click on the links and see if you have some connections or some common connections between them so you can have a better conversation. But it's a way that you can put your people front and center associated with the products. LinkedIn, of course, has had updates for a while. So when you think about the kind of content that you're sharing and in your 10-4-1 rule, you can do this on LinkedIn too, on your LinkedIn company page. But again, don't forget that you just put it up and people are going to come there. They're not. You have to promote it. Promote it on your other channels. Promote it on your homepage. And they've even rolled out a couple new things recently. So they now have something called showcase pages. So products and services are one thing, but now you can create a whole new set of pages that can aggregate parts of your business. So if it didn't naturally fit in a product delineation, you can actually combine it other ways. So Cisco is a good example if you're looking for how someone has used these showcase pages. They created a showcase page for their data center and cloud business. It's not a product, it's just a big aggregation. And again, you can follow it, you can provide a link, you can have an update, a series of updates on these pages. And then they've even opened up their blogging platform. So for instance, they started with influencers, which you may know. Now anybody has the ability to blog on their Facebook profile. Personal profiles, not company profiles. So it may be a way to help develop some thought leadership for some of your executives or for you as you're trying to kind of grow your presence online. So yeah, LinkedIn's giving you some of these great opportunities, some free banners that you can test, contacts, and then the opportunity to share updates. So what we talked about building a network of strong ties, influencing connections for content sharing, and mastering social conversion. Because what we want to do at the end of the day, remember that stat we started with, 73% of CEOs don't believe marketers drive revenue. We really want to prove them wrong and show them that marketers absolutely can drive revenue. So thank you.